We're on Coupe and Alpha in the middle, like where the lines get wide. 105A2, the middle of the left-hand column. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Asi, Gozik Zeresh Rabbi Yushalayim, Hayunotlin Tzchar and Teach Invitation Mana Mitrumas Alishka. Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Asi said the ones who decreed the decrees in Yerushalayim. So again, from our Mishnah, we had Admon and Chanan ben Abishalom. So they were these Gozrei Gzeros. They decreed in monetary cases, we said. So the ones who made these decrees, these Dayanim, the special Dayanim, they would take 99 mana from the Trumas Halishka, that was their wage. So that was from the Trumas Halishka, was from communal money from the Beis HaMikdash. Lo Ratzu Mosifin Lam. And if they didn't want to take it, we gave them extra. So Gemara says, Lo Ratzu, Atubir Shiaskinan. What do you mean if they didn't want? They didn't want to take 99. They said I need 137, so we'd give them more. Or they Rishaim that they wouldn't take what we were giving them, or their official salary. So Ella lo safku. If this amount wasn't enough for their needs, Alpha Pisha so even though they didn't want to take any more, Mosif and Alehem, we would give them extra. So their family needs, it was more than that. If it was more than that, but so we said, okay, so here's extra because that's what we need. And they said, no, no, just give us the regular 99. No, we would make them take more. So just a quick story, Rabbi um, Winchester was from Chicago. He went here to Israel to learn in uh, in Hebron, and he was very seriously hurt in the pogrom in 1929, but he recovered because he was a tzaddik and treated everyone nicely. So some Arabs, I think, nursed him back to health. So he, uh, when they would give him, so he back here, he was a Rebbe at HTC, which was on the west side then, and then later, and he also had a shul in Albany Park, Nusachari. Um, when he would get his paycheck, it never made it home. He always found people who needed it more than him, and so by the time he got home, he had no money to give his wife. And if someone bought him a coat on his way home, he found someone who didn't have a coat, and he gave him the new coat, so then he'd have a coat again. So after a while, I don't know how long it took, they decided that they couldn't, or someone decided they couldn't give him the check. They had to give it to his wife. So Hanoch Teller writes in one of the books from a long time ago, I think it's in Hey Taxi, that at his funeral, they know because he was always also borrowing money to give tzedakah. So the way that Hanoch Teller wrote it over, they made an announcement at his funeral. We know that he had many debts. If he owed you money, contact this person. We are having a fund to pay off his debts. And not one person ever called or spoke to the person asking for the money back. They knew it wasn't for himself. He gave it for tzedakah. Karna, so this Gemara we're going to know here, we learned it on Shavuos night, but here is its place. Uh, so because we just said that they had like an official salary, these Gozer Xeros were on an official salary. Karna have a shakel istra mizakav istra mechayev. He took an istra, a certain coin from the innocent party and from the guilty party, the same amount, v'dayin lehudina, and he would judge their din. How could you do this? The pasuk says you can't take a bribe. And if you think a bribe means something that wasn't taken from both sides, but if you take an equal amount from both sides, then it's not a bribe anymore. He still might corrupt the law. Karna Kavan and if you think that Karna, since he took from both of them, he wasn't going to make a crooked law, even if you took an equal shochad from both sides and you gave the true judgment, that's still aser. Vatanya, we learned in a brayso, the pasuk says, don't take a bribe. Mat hamalomar. What's the pasuk teaching us? If it's telling us not to acquit the guilty or to find the innocent guilty, Harei kvar nemer lo sata mishpat. The pasuk already says you can't twist the law, the judge, which means acquitting the wrong party or convicting the wrong party. So ella filu zakus sazaka l'chayv sachayev amrator v'shocha lo sikach. So even if you're taking bribes to and you're going to come to the correct judgment, that's still forbidden to take a bribe. Even to so bribes are absolutely forbidden. It doesn't matter even if it's going to be for the true case.
So the track is invalid if
Yeah, we're going to say that.
you discover to bribe, even if it's correct.
Well, that's a good question because we'll see. That I don't know because we're going to see about if you took money for judging a case, even if you judged it honestly. I don't know. Let's see a few more lines and maybe I'll have to check something up. So the Gemara says that when we said it was forbidden because it's a bribe, hani mili hecha deshakal b'tar shochat. It's also if you took it as a bribe, but karna b'taras agra havashakal. He took it as his wage for work. But then the Gemara says b'taras agra mishari, even if it's for a wage for the job, it's still not permitted. Is it permitted? V'hatanan, we learned in our Mishnah, hanoto sachar ladun dina b'telim. If you took a wage to judge, his judgments are invalid. It's if he never issued them. They're null and void. So in this case, this is taking as a sachar, as a wage. I don't know if a bribe. Ramosha said when he became rabbi of his shul, so this is for 41 years ago. There's a guy who came, I guess, to Mincha Marav. His job, I think he was a cop or a retired cop. His job was to be at the courthouse downtown, and his job was anyone who had a bribe would give him the envelope to give to the judge. So he wasn't the briber, that was his job. So Crook County, yeah.
You always need at least 1 or 2 degrees of separation in Chicago. And that's why the dailies were so successful. They weren't stupid about it.
So Hani Mili Agardina. That's if you take it as a wage for judging the case. Karna Aga Batera Havashakel. Karna took it as lost wages. Meaning, I'm not taking money to judge your case, but I had another job lined up, so you have to pay me for not doing that job. So this idea of schar batala is something that's true. For example, you're not allowed to get money for teaching Torah. So how do malamdim get paid? So either you say it's a babysitting fee, not to teach the Torah, but it's for babysitting, or you say because you're paying them not to get a different job. No, so you're paying them for not cutting grass, or yeah. We're on 105A3 now. I think we're on the next. Yeah.
What time is it?
7:15. Agar Betela have a shakel. What was your question, Jeff?
But Dan gets paid for it.
From who?
His responsibility, I don't know, from community, for work.
So that's the thing. So the first price that we said today was that those gozer zeros were paid from the community. So it seems that Karna was qualified to be a judge, but that wasn't his job. So sometimes people say, we want you to be our dayan. I mean, now that the CRC has dayanim on the payroll, it's a good thing. They didn't always. until before Rabbi Schwartz, they didn't pay well, I think they only had the Av Basin on the payroll. First was Rabbi Regensburg, and then was Rabbi Karno, and Rabbi Karno didn't get paid a living wage from the CRC, and he had a shul, Mishnah Gemara, and probably some other stuff. Right, he didn't get paid much there either, right? So, did you know Rabbi Karno? Or you heard of him?
I went one Shabbos when my friend Zilfrup was there.
Uh,
I was in charge of making sure that he showed up. They weren't, nobody was too religious or anything. I don't know why I got in charge. So I was there. Rabbi Karno in those days gave his speech
in Yiddish. I'm sure.
Nobody understood it.
Right. When my grandparents went to Rabbi Rosenthal, which is where the Lubavitch Masifta on Morse in California.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I didn't even realize that he was speaking in Yiddish. I never understood the rabbi was talking in English or in Hebrew. I didn't notice that he was speaking in Yiddish. I mean, when I'd go up to him, after evening to wish good Shabbos, he would speak in English. But the drasha, he only spoke in Yiddish. Rabbi Wein was unique that at least in the later years, Reb Zev Wein, well, no, it wasn't even so much in the later years, even in the 60s already, he would alternate weeks. 1 week he'd speak in Yiddish and 1 week he'd speak in English. That was already pretty modern to speak in English half the time. I found through going through all stuff, handwritten announcements. Next week, Rabbi will speak in English.
Well, I know one rabbi, his son, I was accepted to a yeshiva from East Coast, and he didn't know that it wasn't.
Was it in Yiddish?
It was really, really hard. Temple. He just somehow he went.
When I was in high school, my English teacher was a firm guy. He said a joke. Some guy, I know 31 languages. 31 languages, wow. Yeah, 29 of them are Yiddish. So between the Gemara and the English, the Yiddish is a watered down enough Yiddish that he was able to catch on, and clearly the kid had enough seichel to figure out the Yiddish that was thrown in there. Like in my opinion, to go to hear a share in Hebrew isn't such a bad thing if the rabbi speaks not so fast and clear enough, because you know the ideas. You may not know everything together, but you should be able to pick up from the context what he's saying. I mean, again, if he speaks clear enough and slow enough.
Speaking fast
But if not everyone speaks so fast.
good, they're also throwing in politics and you know.
Now I'm talking about a Gemara share, not a drasha, not a drasha.
Oh.
Like if you're a Gemara share,
Oh, yeah.
it's because you know the concepts. You don't need to hear the English word for it, for us the pronunciations would be a little different because they have the Havaras Vardit, which isn't a problem, but you just have to get used to it a little bit. But it's not so hard. If you know what it's about, the Gemara, what the page of the Gemara is about, you should know enough already to be able to follow, as long as they speak, slow and clear enough.
Slow, Israeli speaking slow.
Some do, some don't. I'm very excited still. Yesterday, the new Dayan was appointed to the Beit Din Hagadol, Ramosha Salam. He was in the Dayan School at Rabbi Avinu when I was there. So I know him. And the chief rabbi, I also know, but he was on Shlichut. He was in Belgium the year I was there. I heard him a few years later, of an excellent speaker. I don't think I heard a Gemara share from him, but Ramosha Salam, I heard some share for and spoke to him in the Beis Medrash. So not this relevant to what we're talking about, but it's very exciting for me to hear it. So we were just saying so we got off the topic because until recently it wasn't so that Dayan got paid from the community to judge cases. So Karna would take it for not working at his other job. The Agar B'Tela Mishari is it even? So we said to teach Torah, you're not allowed to take money for teaching Torah. So teachers of Torah either get paid for babysitting. It's not for teaching Torah, but it's for having an adult supervising the kids, or it's They could have gotten another job, so we're paying them not to have another job. Lahavdil, once Dave Ross on CBS, this is years ago on the radio, he was talking about the United States programs that they paid the farmers not to plant certain crops. So he made a hilarious thing about to get paid for not doing all these things. So you're paying not to get a job. But is it even permitted to not get a schar batala, money for not working another job? But we learned in the brisa, it's disgusting, it's dirty, it's unseemly for a dayan who takes a wage to judge. Ela shadino din, but his judgment it stands. It's not nullified like the one who takes it as a wage. Tohechidami, ilema agardina, if you're getting a wage for judging, dino din, this brisa says that the judgment stands, but we just quoted a brisa a couple lines up. Hanotas char ladun dino betelim. If you take a wage to judge a case, the judgment that you make is null and void. So ella agar betela. So this brisa that says that it's the ruling stands, but it's not it's a doesn't look so good. That's when you're taking money not to judge the case, but you're getting reimbursement for not working your other job. The katani mechor edayin, but still it says it's a disgusting thing. It's a dirty thing. It's not a good thing. So why would Karna do this thing that is criticized by the brisa? So the Gemara says hani mila betela dulo mucha. That's if it's not apparent that he has any other skill or any other job. I shouldn't say any other skill, any other job. So you're telling me you have to pay him for not working? Well, what's he going to do?
One second. You think they're not supposed to teach Torah and get paid?
You're not supposed to get paid for teaching Torah.
Period.
Yeah. So for Malam de Tinoko, a teacher in school, they get paid for schar batala. They get paid for not getting a real job.
That's okay.
Yeah, because they're not getting paid for teaching. They're getting paid. So while they're there, they have to teach, but they're not getting paid for teaching. If you're teaching Torah, you're not supposed to get paid.
What about if you gave a lecture and you convert it to a book and you want to sell it? You can do it.
If you want to sell a book of Torah, I think you could get paid for the paper. I don't think you could charge money for the book. I think you're not allowed to. You may not be able to sell the ideas. I'm not sure actually, because it's not exactly the act of teaching, but according to the opinion, let's say the Rosh, I think it is that nowadays the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah includes buying books. I mean, it would be a mitzvah to buy the book, but who to sell the book? Right. Most people don't make any money on books, in Jewish books. No.
You get paid for the expenses associated with the distribution?
Yeah, the binding, the publishing costs money, so you're getting money for the physical part. The Torah itself, you're probably not. The person who's selling the book isn't getting money for the sale of the Torah. And there's special halachot even of selling a Sefer Torah. You're usually only allowed to sell a Torah to learn Torah or to get married. It's very restrictive to sell a Sefer Torah.
I have a series
unless you're a sofer, and I guess you were.
I have a series of lectures which I'm thinking about converting to either a book or something. So
yeah, you can charge money for the book. You don't have to give it away for free.
But it will cover the expense.
Hopefully, yeah.
But you cannot charge for teaching the book through the book.
No, you don't get paid for teaching Torah. So Karna betela demucha havishakel. Karna it was very clear that he was losing money by judging the case and not going to his job. The havi tahi ba'ambra the chamra. He used to smell the different barrels of wine in the storehouse. The yayiv lezuza, and they would pay him a zuz for it because he had a good nose for this. That he could tell if it was going bad and turning into vinegar. So if it was, they'd quick sell that first while it was still wine, and because if once it turned to vinegar, it was worth very little money. So because he had a job, it was always in demand. People always had wine. In those days, they didn't drink water. They drank wine. So he had everyone knew that he had a skill and that he was always in demand. So by the fact that he was judging the case, he was losing out on this. Now, the value of the Istara compared to the Zuz, I didn't look that up, but that would be interesting to calculate. Ki had Rav Huna, and also Rav Huna, ki have asidin al kameh, when a judge would come in for him, Amr lahu, he would tell them, the two parties, Havulu gavri didali b'charikai, get me a laborer who could water my crops instead of me, the edun l'chadina, and I'll judge. Because if he wouldn't, everyone knew he had fields, and if he wouldn't water his fields, the crops wouldn't grow and he'd starve. So that was clear that he had work that he would do, and the fact that he was judging, he couldn't do the work. So I guess instead of I mean, I guess this is a smaller chiddush than Karna. So he needed this work done. So he wasn't getting paid to hire someone else. He just said, get someone to water my field, and then I'll be able to judge your case. Karno was actually taking money because he was more of a, I mean, I guess from an economics perspective, the good or versus a service. He was doing a service. I mean, you could say a watering thing was a service too, but if he didn't need money to water his plants, someone would water his plants, then his crops, then it would be they would get watered. Rabbi Bo says, go see how blind the eyes are from the people who accept bribes. Adam chash be'enav nosin mama l'rofe safek misrape safek ena misrape. If someone has a pain in his eye, now in those days they thought there was a connection between the eye and the heart. So a pain in the eye was halachically a chola sheyesh bo sakana. It was qualified as someone who had it was a very serious case. You could be Michal Shabbos for because they thought if you had a problem with your eye, it was connected to the heart and you die very easily from it. So it was a very important thing. So if you have an eye pain, you'd go pay a doctor. You don't know if he was going to be successful or not because you don't want to go blind. Suffolk misrape, Suffolk eno misrape. You willingly pay in order to have the chance of not going blind. You don't know for sure that was going to work. The they take even a small amount, and they're definitely going to go blind. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, "Ki hashochad ya'aver pichim." Shochad, the bribery, will blind healthy people. Tana Rabbana, we learned in a brisa, a different brisa, "Ki hashochad ya'aver enei chachamim." We're at the end of 105a4. The bribe will blind the eyes of wise people. It will certainly blind foolish people. Visalif direi tzadikim, and it will pervert the words of righteous people. It will certainly pervert Rishaim who accept bribes. We mentioned Shavuos night. We mentioned the Gemara in Shabbos that there was a certain corrupt min. Min is nowadays we call it apikoros, but the halachic status of min is different than apikoros. And Ima Shalom and Rabbi Gamliel were exposing him to everyone that he was such a fraud. So Ima Shalom gave him a lamp, and after as a bribe. So she and Rabbi Gamliel, I believe, were a brother and sister, and she wanted. And halachically, because there's a brother, she wouldn't get any Yerusha. The sons would get the Yerusha. So she gave him a bribe and said, I want a Yerusha. And he said, even though, and so he said, okay, that's good. And then Rabbi Gamliel gave him a bigger bribe, a special donkey, that she shouldn't get a portion. And he said, "Oh, if something." The Gemara said at some point, even though the Torah says that, but there's a new book, and the book says we don't have to follow it. So now your sister doesn't get the Yerusha, you all get that. But then she said, but your wisdom should be as bright as a lamp. They all knew that she gave him a lamp, and then after he retracted and said, but the book says you don't you could follow the law of Moshe still if you want. So because he got the bigger bribe from the son, so okay, the son gets to keep the Yerusha, he doesn't have to split with the sister. And so then Rabbi Gamliel said the special mule that he gave him knocked over the lamp to refer to the special donkey that he gave him. It was worth more than the lamp. He took shochat from both sides, but they did it to expose him as a charlatan. But that wasn't a real judge, but they did it so no one else would use him anymore. Midi tipshim or b'nei dinhu. So how come it talks about a Russia or um a Russia or a Tipesh being a judge? A Russia or a Tipesh can't judge. So why does the Torah says that why did the Brisa say that if it's gonna corrupt uh 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 a tzaddik, it's certainly gonna corrupt a Russia. A Russia can't judge to accept the bribe. So Elahachikamer, this is what the Brisa means. Ki chachamim, bribery will blind the eyes of wise people. Afilu chacham gadol v'lokeach shochad, even if he's a big, brilliant chacham, but he takes a bribe. Einu nifter mina olam below samyus halev. He's not going to depart this world without suffering blindness of the heart. V'salach divrei tzadikim, and bribery perverts the words of tzadikim, as we turn to Kufay Amid Beis. Afilu tzadik gomer v'lokeach shochad, einu nifter mina olam below tir of das. Even if he's a perfect tzaddik, but he took a bribe, so he's not a perfect tzaddik anymore, he is not going to leave this world without losing his seichel. Kiyasur Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came to Bava from Eretz Yisrael, he said the following over. It doesn't really mean as soon as he got there, but there's one of the teachings that he brought over. Darish Rabbi Nachman Bar Kohen. Rav Nachman Bar Kohen made a drasha from a pasuk. My diksiv malchba mishpat yamid arts v'ish trumos yarsenu. A king with justice will make the world stand, but a man of truma literally means it's like a donation, but in those times you have to give truma to a kohen, a 40th or a 50th or a 60th of your crop to the kohen. Yaharsena will destroy it. So what's the difference between this melech and the ish trumos? The melech who will keep the world standing, and the ish trumos who is going to destroy the world. If a judge is going to be similar to a king who doesn't need anything, because kings are rich, everyone takes care of them, then the world will stand. But if he's like a Kohen, who because the Kohen wants to get truma from people, he hangs around the grain houses where people are threshing their grain and getting it ready. So, on your way out, I could take your truma so you could eat it immediately. You don't have to go looking for a Kohen. It's a schnoring Kohen. So that's an unseemly thing. If the dayan is like someone who's schnoring for something, that is going to destroy the world. Amar Rabbi Bar Shela. What's a good Hebrew word for schnoring? Danny, do you know?
Sure. Too good of a word.
Right, too good of a word. Okay. Amar Rabbi Bar Rav Shela. Hi Daina Deshal Shelta Pasul Meidun Dina. So if a dayan borrows things from his neighbors, from people in his community, he's puzzled to judge. And that's only if he doesn't have anything to lend out to other people. But if he has stuff to lend out, also, then it's not a problem. So it's not like he's getting favors from them because they're lending things to him. It's clearly a place people lend to each other, so he borrows from some people, but when people need, they borrow from him. Now, nowadays that there's so many gemachs, especially in Israel, there's lists of gemachs. Even here, I think in the Achdus book, I think they have lists of gemachs also. So I think it's understood. I don't know. It still might be different here than in Eretz Yisrael. But Ini, is that true that if he doesn't lend stuff, if he does lend stuff out, then it's mutter, and if he doesn't, it's not mutter. Rava shal shilta midavei Bar Miriam. Rava borrowed from the house of Bar Miriam. Bar Miriam was a wealthy man who died, and he borrowed stuff from the kids, even though they didn't borrow stuff from him. So the Gemara says, "Hasam lachshuvu hu debai." There, he didn't borrow it because he needed it. It was to make them feel important. Now, it doesn't seem that this halacha is brought in the Rambam. It doesn't seem like it's in the Shulchan Aruch either. The Torah brings it down. Is it a thing that he didn't borrow it because he needed it, but sometimes he knew that a certain person needs certain encouragement, needed to feel important. Now, Gaiva isn't a thing, but someone there's Rav Shlomo Zalman, I think. Was it Rav Shlomo Zalman? Stories of certain Talmidei Chachamim that of recent vintage that they used to go to visit a certain, Rebbitzin of an almana. And they said, why did you do that and didn't go straight home? He said, when her husband was alive, tons of people would come on Yantif to wish him good Yantif. And now that her husband's dead, no one's gonna visit her and she's gonna feel lonely and upset. So I went to visit her to make sure that she'll feel, she won't feel upset, so lonely that her husband is dead now and that she's a widow. So I think that this Gemara means that he borrowed from them to make them feel like they're still a very important, a very, important family. So even though their father died, he borrowed from them just to make them feel good, not because he needed it, but it helped them psychologically keep getting on with their lives. That's what I would think this Gemara means. Amarava, my time deshochta. What is the reason that shochet is asur? I mean, we know the Torah says, but what does it do psychologically? Keva de kibbale shochta minei ikrile daita legabe. Once he accepts the bribe, his mind becomes closer to this person. V'havi kigufin. They're like the same person. Ve'ein adam roa chovel atzmo. And a person can't see his own faults. And that's how we'd say in English. Literally, a person wouldn't find that he did anything wrong. That he's no one will find self-guilt. I just was reading about a certain former judge in New York that it seemed that he was suffering from a paranoia or something. So he did some illegal things, and they caught him and they put him to jail. And he wrote to his friends, "I'm different than anyone else here," and they're all worried about him. And they got special requests to call him in the prison, and he said, "Oh, everyone else here is says they're innocent, but I'm guilty and I deserve to be here." So then they were, because the guy had a great sense of humor, so they realized that he really he admitted that he did something wrong and he deserved a penalty, but everyone else in jail, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know why I'm here. So you never say I didn't do anything wrong. My shochad. So what does the word shochad mean? Shahu chad. They are like one. Chad is echad. So when someone gives you a bribe, you're like them. So therefore, you're never going to see anything wrong with them. Just like you don't see anything wrong with yourself. Amra Papa Lolidon Inish Dina Lamanda Rachamle Velolamanda. You shouldn't judge someone who you're very close to, you love them, and not someone who you hate. I don't know if literally love, but you like them very much. Well, Rashi does say Ohavim, but it's a little bit later. This someone who he loves very much, he's not going to find that they did anything wrong. It's psychologically difficult to see a fault in them. And you can't judge someone that you hate because it's very difficult to find a redeeming quality in them, that they would be innocent. Amar Abaye, if there's a young Talmid Chacham that the people of his city like him, Lab mishum demale tfei. It's not because he's so great. El mishum delamuchach lubamili dishmaya. He's not giving them enough musar. He's not reproving them and reproaching them proper way in the heavenly matters. B'mili dishmaya. So I don't know if mili dishmaya literally means beinadam lamakom, because it is possible that people need to remind musar about beinadam lachavero also, but b'mili dishmaya.
Says here, the Gemara refers to a community of ignorant folk who take offense at being rebuked. Okay.
It's not. I don't know if they think everyone's a kol guy, but please, people. I was. It's because it's kind of. It's not exactly. I thought maybe it might be related based on what we were learning on Shavuos night from the Pischei Tshuva, but Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rav Aaron's first cousin, the Brisker Rav's son, he died about 40 years ago, in Yerushalayim. uh, eh, so the story that I saw, and I didn't see the end of it, it was how come Rabbi wants to show how important it is to speak properly. He had Tavi, he served tongue, but some tongues were cooked properly, were very soft and delicious, and some tongues were cooked wrong and they were very hard. So he told everyone to eat, and they were all eating Rabbi Huda Nasi. So all the people were eating, they were picking the good tongues to eat. So he said there's a proper way to speak and an improper way to speak, and you have to, just like these tongues are good, you have to speak the proper way. So people asked, why didn't he just tell them? Why did he feed them the stuff too? So Rabbi said, anyone can hear you give mussar to a bunch of people, they say that doesn't apply to me. It applies to the Tayenim. So when they were all eating this thing, they couldn't say it didn't apply to them. Rabbi said that was the kunz of why Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had them all eat, because they couldn't deny that they did the same thing that he's criticizing them for, taking the good tongues. There's a proper way to do it. So it's the only reason I might agree with the ignorant part, but not with the rest of the statement of that, is because not even nowadays, for the young rabbis from against Micha from Mayu, whatever, they start out not in a big shul. Either he started as a rabbi in a small community or assistant somewhere. So serving Rabbanan here, it was his first job, so he wasn't going to be in a big place yet. He was going to be in a off the beaten road path to begin with. So I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I disagree with that comment as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, do they mean, I mean, we can get into specifics, do they mean ignorant in matters of Torah law? I mean, any rabbi
I don't think
nowadays,
it means that, because the truth is that someone could say we need to give more tzedakah. So this guy say, I give enough tzedakah. That guy with the Mercedes over there, or with the Bentley, he's the one who needs to give more tzedakah. You could always there was a popular thing. I don't know exactly where it started. Rav Yosher even used it in one of the five drashos, but in Aleinu we say Bashamayim ma'al v'al aretz mitachas, in the heaven above and in the world underneath. What does people usually do? There's a drasha. It's not the pshat in it, but people usually look in Mili Deshamayim in religious matters. They look below them and they say, "Oh, that guy isn't as firm as me. I'm doing better, so I'm in a good spot. I don't have to improve my ruchnias." And in Gashmias, they look up to keep up with the Joneses, and they say, "Oh, in Gashmias, I need to work more. I could cut a corner here in order to get more money or this or that." But what does Aleinu say? Bashamayim mal. For the ruchnias things, we have to look up and say, I have to do more, because look at that tzaddik over there. He does more. I have to try to be more like him. And v'ala aretz, the stuff related to the Gashmiyas, to this world, mitachas. Look, there's people worse off than you, so be happy with what you have. So it's human nature. You give muster. It's not directed to me. I don't have that fault. It's what the Gemara is saying. A person doesn't see his own faults. So if they like the rabbi, it's because he's not being harsh enough for them and challenging them to do better. That's the way to look at it, in the way that we would speak today. You can't do it in a way that's critical, though that certainly there's teachers who, or sometimes people have authority figures to them. Why didn't you do better on this test? Whereas, a better way of motivating now, based on what we know now and things, is not to be critical. You have to be supportive, but also give them a challenge. So if they were so friendly, it's because he's not challenging them enough to be better in Mili Deshamayim. He's not saying he's a bad. Rava wasn't saying, was it Rava over here? Abaye. So he's not saying that they're not a bad Talmud Chacham, but he says he's not giving them enough musar. He's not challenging them to reach their potentials and what they need to. Amarava, Mareish Havamina Hani B'nei Mechuza Kul Rachmili. Rava says, originally I thought that the people of Mechuza, they all like me. Kavan Havi Daina, once I was a Dayan, Amina Minahu Sanuli Minahu Rachmili. I thought some of them don't like me and some of them like me, meaning the ones that I found guilty, they're mad at me, and the ones I found innocent, they like me. But once they saw people who had multiple cases. Sometimes I found them guilty, and sometimes I found them innocent. Amina imrachim kulam urachmi musanu kunusali. If they love me, they'll all love me. If they hate me, they all hate me. Meaning, they see that I'm not favoring some people. I try to look each case, and each case I judge on the merit. So sometimes you're right, and sometimes I think you're not right. It's not because it's personal. I mean, Ravarin in the Sefer, and we've heard it from him that there was a certain butcher that that he shechted a certain cow, which was a big expense, and there was a certain shaila, and Reb Chaim, as hard as he tried, he couldn't say that it was kosher. So so he had to sell it to the goyim at the price of treif meat, which was much lower than the kosher meat, and he and there was no problem. He accepted the psak, and then later he had a lawsuit with someone else about a much smaller sum, and he was found to owe the other guy money, and he yelled and screamed at Reb Chaim that he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he doesn't know any Torah and this and that. That Reb Chaim had to say, "You have to leave because you're being disrespectful." And I mean, the part of the story was that on Erev Yom Kippur, Reb Chaim went to the butcher shul and was looking under the talisim because they already had their talis over their head for Kol Nidre to find this butcher and ask him a chila for calling him a chatzov, that he had chutzpah, that he had to leave. And when he found him, he started yelling at Reb Chaim again. So Reb Chaim actually had taken his sons with, so he'd be asking in front of a beis din, asking mechila in front of the beis din Erev Yom Kippur. So there was two lessons from the story. One is that Reb Chaim held that in Erev Yom Kippur there's an obligation to ask forgiveness, even if you weren't right, even if you were wrong, even if you were right. Reb Chaim was certainly right to tell him you're acting chutzpahdik right now, you have to leave. But on Erev Yom Kippur you ask forgiveness even if you weren't wrong. So that's one was a special din of asking kapara Erev Yom Kippur. But then his son said, from a psychological aspect, when he lost a lot of money with the animal being treif, he wasn't mad. Here, when he lost a much smaller money, he's so mad. What's the difference? So Reb Chaim said it's simple. In that case, he didn't. There was no winner. In this case, it wasn't that he lost; it's that the other guy won. In the case of the cow, there wasn't someone who won. In the Din Torah for the smaller amount of money, because the other guy won, he got very mad and couldn't accept losing the to the other guy. That's the psychological insight. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Okay, 105b 2. Tanarabanan v'shochalosi kach. We learned in the brisa. The pasuk says, "A bribe do not take." Eino tzarich lamar shochad mama. It doesn't need to be said that we're talking about a monetary shochad. Elafilu shochad dvarim nami aser. Even shochad of dvarim is also forbidden. Midalok siv betz lo sika, because it doesn't say betza. Betza means a monetary payment because it's a shochad, so that includes even if it's not monetary. Now, the art scroll translated as a bribe of words, and they have a footnote saying it's not necessarily words, but I think we're going to see that words is actually a bad translation. Devarim can mean things, but it means there's a bribe that's not monetary, but it has to be more than just words. It seems that the bribe of words is not usher. There's an isser of chanifa, flattering, but that usually I was looking it up. I think a source for it is in Parshas Matos, I think, or Mase. I think it's in Matos. It's learned from Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Sheva Menashe that Moshe said, if you promise to go first and fight first in Eretz Yisrael, then you can inherit this land on the east side of the Jordan River. And if you don't go fight with your brethren, then you're not able to get this land. So but the word that he says, "V'yisem nikim Hashem Yisrael," you'll be clean or innocent. You've fulfilled your obligation. So it's free and clear. Like a loan would be, you own it free and clear once you paid off the loan. So there's a halacha for Yisem Nikim not to do suspect things, and I think that some learn from there that, or maybe I'm mixing it from a different pasuk, but you're not allowed to lahachzikidei over avera. You're not allowed to flatter people. So let's say someone who does things wrong, you're not allowed to say good things to them or about them, which can be construed as supporting their non a compliance of mitzvos. But stam to flatter a judge, there doesn't seem to be a real issue of just of words. But in regard to contemporary, not necessarily in regard to interest on a loan, they say from a bunch of postgame that you're not even allowed to say thank you when they give you a loan, even though because that would be shochat. And they have some things from Shlomo Zalman saying, well, you have to, you're not saying thank you because of the money. You have manners, and you say thank you. But then he saw a certain earlier posek who all said that you're not allowed to say thank you, and he said he found it difficult. Rav Shlomo Zalman was a very kind-hearted man, so the fact to not say thank you was a foreign concept to him. But because of what I was reading, he said it's not so pashut. You can say thank you because it's a shail of ribis. But ribis and shochat are not the same thing. Ribis is interest. So even if it's non-monetary, even if it's non-monetary, and even just verbal thing could be a problem of interest. But that's not our topic. But the Gemara there, I think it's in Bava Metzia Daf Ayin Hey, maybe. So there, ribis dvarim, that literally means words can be like paying interest on a loan. But for here, I don't think dvarim at all means words. And we'll see from these cases. So what are some examples of shochat dvarim? Ki had Shmuel have a avra b'mabra. Shmuel was crossing, it's either a bridge, or according, I think, to the Rambam, it was a ladder. According to the Meiri, it was some type of boat crossing some river. So to help him get up across, Asa Hawagavra, a certain person gave gave out his hand to help him get out of the boat or up the ladder or across the bridge. Even if it's a bridge, it wasn't like a nice bridge in our days. It probably was, a rope for your feet and a rope for your hand, probably. So Amar Lei, Shmuel said, what do you do? He was, he knew the guy wasn't hired by the highway association by the transportation department to help people cross the bridge or get out of the boat. So Dina Isli says, I have a din Torah. Amar Lei, Psana Lach Dina. So he said, I am disqualified from judging your case because you helped me by holding me my hand to help me get out. So that wasn't monetary. It's more than just a verbal, but that was something that disqualified him to be a judge. A Meimer Havayasav Kadain Dina. A Meimer was sitting in judging cases. Parach Gatva Areshe. A feather from a bird went on his head. Also Gavra Shakli. So a certain person came and took it off the head, to take the feather away. Amrle Ma'vidtech. So a Meimer says, what are you doing? Because he knew that his job wasn't to take feathers off of the heads of people when the feathers would come on them. Amarle Dina Isla says, I have a din Torah. Amarle Psil and Allah Ladina. So I'm disqualified to judge your case because what you did to me would be considered shochat dvarim. If you wouldn't have had a case, you wouldn't have done this for me. You're trying to curry favor. Marukva Havi Shadi Ruka Kameh. So Marukva was going in the street and there was spit, or maybe it was vomit. And it would have been not nice for him to have to walk through it. And I don't know, maybe it's like the streets nowadays in Mea Sharm. It's not there's nowhere to walk around it. The sidewalk is as big or whatever. I don't know. But he couldn't help but go through that through the spit. So Asa Hawu Gavra Kasye. So a certain person came and covered it up. So Marukva was able to walk. Amarle Ma Vitach. Marukva says, what do you do? I know you're not the street cleaner here. Amarle Dina Isle. I have a basin. I have a din Torah. Amarle Psunalach Ladina. I am disqualified from judging your case. Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi have a ragal arisi to havi maisi lebachal maili shapsa kata de peri. Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi, he owned a field, but he didn't work his own field. He had a sharecropper. So the sharecropper would get, I don't know, maybe 60% or whatever, and the rest he would give to Rabbi Yishmael, who was the owner. So he would bring every Friday a basket of fruits or a produce, whatever it was. Yom achad aitzele b'chamsha b'shapsa. 1 week he brought it on Thursday. So Amarle Rabbi Shmuel said, "Ma'ishna ha'idna." What's different this week that you're bringing on Thursday, not on Friday? Amarle Dina Isli. He says, "I have a din Torah." Famina agavorche aitzele lamar. And then I was thinking, once I have to come to town, I might as well bring the fruit now. Now, I don't know if this is specifically because after Ezra was masaking, that basin had to sit on Mondays and Thursdays. And if he had the field, maybe he lived, out in the suburbs, closer to the fields, not in the city. So you'd come into the town on Monday and Thursdays. So maybe because he was coming, because he had the dintora, he was coming on Thursday. Normally he didn't come on Thursday. He didn't have a dintora, so he came on Friday to bring it to the owner of the field. Maybe, I don't know. So once I'm coming in for the dintora, I'll bring the fruit today instead of tomorrow. Lo kibul minei. Rabbi Shmuel did not accept the fruit. Amar lei psun alach ladina. He says, I am puzzled to be your dayan. Now it seems that he could have accepted the fruit and not judge, but he's saying that it's a form of shochad. So even if I won't judge your case, it might be a problem of shochad. But regardless, I can't judge your case now either, because you're bringing it to me early, so that's special because of the din Torah. So that's a form of rivus. Osif Zuzah Drabanan. So he appointed a pair of rabbis to judge the case. So Rishonim say, but we can't have an even number of judges. You need an odd number. Normally we have 3, or 5, or 7, or 23, or 71. But if there's 2, then there could be gridlock, and that's not okay. So he said either they were both extraordinarily qualified, so that each of them could have judged by themselves. So I guess in that case, he could also judge as a pair, or he appointed 2 to sit with someone else, so there would be 3. Why exactly this way? It isn't so clear. So they were judging this sharecropper's case. Bahadi because of Asi. So this says the article translates it as Rabbi Shmuel was going back and forth. You could say that the because of Asi, the back and forth of the Tovea, the claimant, is saying his case. The Nitva, the person who's being accused or whatever is replying, and then he counter. So you could say that it's as the details of the case were going back and forth. Rabbi Shmuel said, Amar, Rabbi Shmuel said, if he wants to, he should claim this. And if he wants, he could claim this. That if you say that, it would be a better claim for the sharecropper. So Amar, he said to himself, Rabbi Shmuel said, well, I don't know what's up. Tipach nafshu shemakabel shochat. The souls of people who accept bribes should blow up. I think tipach is, it fills up with a lot of air. Me, I didn't take the fruit. And even if I would have taken it, it's owned by me. It's from my field. But it's having trying to give it to me early is causing me to favor him and think of ideas for him. Someone who takes a real bribe certainly are going to be blinded and not judge the case honestly. Rabbi Shmuel bar Elisha Aitzilehu Gava Reishis Agat. So in the other cases, the first 3 cases, they did something that they normally wouldn't have done. Here they did something that they would have done, and they did it a day early, and still he shows, look, it's psychologically making me closer to him and not seeing his faults. I'm trying to think of a way to make him to make his claim stronger. Rabbi Shmuel bar Elisha Aitzilehu have a Gereshis Agat. So Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha was a Kohen. It's and one of the besides for truma, the first shearing of a sheep goes to the Kohen. So a certain person brought it to Rabbi Shmuel. So Amar Le Mehechat. He said, "Where are you from? I don't recognize you. Why would you give it to me? Normally, you give a truma gift to a Kohen that you know." So Amar Le Midoch Plan. I'm from such and such a place. Plan is like Plony. I'm from, the anonymous place, but it was from such and such a place. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Elisha said, there was no other Kohen between there and here. It's not that we're not next door. You couldn't find any other Kohen. So Amarle Dina Isli says, I have a dintora. And once I have to come here for the dintora, I'll give it to you. Amarle Psilin Dina. I am disqualified from judging for you. Lo kibo mine, and he did not accept the wall. He appointed a pair of rabbis to judge. They judged him. Bahadi because of Asi, as the case was going back and forth. Amar, he said, if he wants, he could claim this. If he wants, he can claim this. Just like the previous case. Amar, the souls of people who accept bribes should explode. They should expand and explode. I didn't take bribe, and if I did, it's mine because I'm a Kohen. He was giving it to me. Someone who accepts bribe certainly is going to to psychologically favor the person who gave him the money. Rav Anan Aitile Haugavra Kinta de Gidli de Begili. Rav Anan brought a certain person brought to Rav Anan certain fish, either de Begili, it was like these small fish that were in the net still, or they were from a river called Gili. So Amarle Mayavitech. So why are you giving me these fish? Dina Islay. He said, I have a base a din Torah. Lokilbei Rav Anan didn't accept it. Amarle. He said, Dina. I am disqualified from judging you. Amarle Dina Demar Labaina. He says, okay, I don't need you to judge me, but Kibo Kabila Lekabel Mar. Please just accept this gift. Lolaminan Mar the Mei Ikruve Bikurim. Because so Bikurim normally means the first fruits, and the first fruits you would bring starting from Shavuos time and make a declaration when you bring it to the Kohen. So even though these aren't literally Bikurim, they were fish, but there is a tradition, and the Gemara is going to say in the next line what it is, to give a gift to a Talmid Chacham. So just please accept my gift. And I'm not asking you for judge, but at least, honor me by accepting my gift. The Tanya, because we learned in the Bribes of Ishmami Bal Shleisha, Vayavile Isha Elohim Lachem Bikur Master Lachem Soren Vikarmo Betziklo. No, a person came, the man came from Bal Shleisha, a certain place, and he brought to the man of God, which was the Navi Elisha. It happens to be that the Tana is Rabbi Shmuel bar Elisha. It's not related to Elisha Navi, but it's just interesting how. And he brought 20 barley breads and wine. I mean, caramel, freshly in their shells. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin talks about it that Baal Shalisha was the earliest place that the barley ripened, that they're able to harvest, and he brought a very large amount to Elisha. How could Elisha? How come he says he brought lechem bikurim? Elisha wasn't a Kohen. So Tosfos thinks that Rashi says he wasn't a Kohen. Tosfos isn't so sure. Tosfos says Elisha could have been a Kohen, but Bikurim are only eaten in Yerushalayim, and Elisha was in the Shomron. So even if he was a Kohen, part of bringing Bikurim was you brought it to the Beis HaMikdash. It was brought in front of the Mizbeach or whatever, and the Kohen could eat it in Yerushalayim, within the Mechitzos of Yerushalayim. So Tosfos says he could have been a Kohen, but he couldn't eat the Bikurim because he wasn't in Yerushalayim. But this is teaching us whoever brings a gift to a Talmid Chacham, it's as if he brought Bikurim. Amarle, Ravana said, Kibulo ba'ina likabel. I don't want to accept it, or I didn't need to accept it, but Hasha da Amarli Taima, once you gave me this pshat about the person bringing the bread to Elisha as a gift, Mikablina, I'm gonna accept it. Shadri l'kamed Rav Nachman, but then he told Rav Nachman to judge the case. Shalach le, he sent a message to Rav Nachman, Naidi mar lahai gavra, please judge. Well, he doesn't say please, but master should judge this person. The Anan psilin alach ladina, because I Anan am puzzled to judge him. Amar, so Rav Nachman said, Midashachli hachish mamini krivelihu. It must be that he's a relative of Rav Anan, and that's where Rav Anan is puzzle. So Avakaim Dina Diasmi Kameh. So there was a judgment of some Yisomim that were in his coming to his case, but Amar, he said, Hayase v'hayase. There's a mitzvah to judge a case, but then there's also a mitzvah to honor Talmidei Chachamim. Aseh Torah Arif. So the mitzvah of honoring Torah by me judging this relative of Rav Anan, that's more so. Saki Dina Diasmi. He pushed away the case of the Yisomim va'achte ledine, and he judged this case. And once this person saw how much respect he was being given, he couldn't speak. He couldn't even make his claim. So we're a little late, but let's just finish a couple more lines. So Rav Nachman misunderstood. So he wasn't he didn't need to be honored, but the fact that he was being treated so well, he was tongue tied and he couldn't say anything. The Gemara in Shavuos at the Daf Lamed Aleph or so talks about this, that if there's a Talmid Chacham and a regular person, you can't tell the Talmid Chacham to sit, or because you can't make it show that you're favoring him, or if someone is dressed in super fancy clothes and other one's wearing rags, you tell the poor person to either dress him nicely like you, because we know first impressions matter, or you have to wear regular clothes. You can't wear super fancy clothes like that. So not appear things aren't equal. Rav Anan have a ragel Elio dos Agabe. Rav Anan used to be visited by Elio Navi to teach him Torah. To have a masnili Seder Elio, and that's what we call the book Seder Elio was from what Elio Navi taught Rav Anan. Kevin have Avid Hachi, but once Rav Anan pushed away the lawsuit of the Yisomim, Istalek Elio Navi didn't look at him anymore. It didn't come anymore. Yosef Tanisa by Rachmim, so he fasted and davened that Elio should return. Va'asa, he came back, but Kiyasa haven't voicely beuse. But he was very scared of Elionavi this time. So he made a box, so he would learn in the box, so he wouldn't see Elio, so he wasn't so scared. But ad the apigle sidra until they finished learning the seder of what Elio was teaching him of Hainu da Amri, and that's why people say seder deli Rabba, seder Eliozuta. There was the big seder of the big Elio and the seder of the little Elio. The big Elio was before Elio left. The little Elio seder was after he left. Tosfos, I think, says a little different that he did not. It took much longer to learn the second time, like 4 times as long or something. So yeah, so the second seder was they learned a lot less. So even let's say they were both the same amount of time, but they covered less ground. So it's Eliozuta because it literally was shorter. They didn't cover as many topics. So we'll leave it here. A few minutes late for Mincha.